Good evening, everyone. Today we'll be hearing from ASOSU and hear them present their budget. As I said before, students must present, but it's good to have anyone who you want, faculty, staff, other students, to help answer any questions the committee may have. The presentations will last about 30 minutes, and we may interrupt nicely to ask questions, although we'll leave most of our questions for afterwards during our discussion. After 30 minutes, we'll move in about 45 minutes of discussion, although it could always go longer. It's really just up to us and how much we have to talk about. After that deliberation, we will reach a tentative fee, and then we will set the final fee on February 12th at the open hearing. That's at 5 p.m. in the MU Ballroom. And if you could also send me your presentation so I can put it up on the website and link it towards on KBVR's YouTube as well, because they're recording it tonight. You can go and get started.
Okay, my name is Matt Palm. I'm the graduate co-chair of the Ways and Means Committee in the House.
I am Sakita Dison, the current ASOSU Executive Director of Finance. So with us is Emily McLean from OSA, and there's also Claire Cady and Vanessa Clark from HSRC, along with professional staff Drew Dessler and Patricia Lacey. Okay, so our agenda for tonight is we're going to be reviewing Budget 1, which is a clear-cut based budget, which will be below the value that was approved for last year by negative 0.14%. So our packages will include mandatory increases, safe ride, travel, and we will also be reviewing Budget 2 as well. And at the end, we'll have HSRC will present their packages along with OSA.
Okay. All right, so the reduction budget. The way I want to present it to you is by showing sort of what the room was that we had to work with and the space that we felt comfortable cutting. We cut about $32,000 out of our affairs budget. The vast majority of this came out of not funding the graduate affairs position because that was a GRA ship. Oh, I'm in way of the camera, whoops. And the next big cut was the administrative affairs and logistics advocate. And we made a few cuts in public relations and Congress. So the total in terms of cuts was about $109,000 that we had to play with to stay negative. So where did we redistribute that money? Student fee management requested a $15,000 increase from us. We had some increases in administrative costs, most of that going to student pay per our bylaws. And then we had a legal advocate position, a student advocate. Most of these are OPE-related costs. And then, of course, OSA and HSRC's budget requests. So you put the math together between those two, and it's still about $1,700 lower than last year's budget, which So that's roughly the difference. So that's how we sort of redistributed the savings that we had from all of these cuts into these other priorities. So those priorities are?
So our Budget 1 priorities is preserving OSA membership, Oregon Student Association, our mandatory increases, which will be for administration individuals that are working with ASOSU, and HSRC support proportional to growth, which means that with projected enrollment, there will be a need of more services from HSRC, such as food pantry, meal box programs, so just to support the programming so we can pass it on for the future. And we also have Safe Ride. The reason why there is 3 asterisks in the parentheses is because if Budget 1 is going to be approved, we will not have enough money or funding to supplement the 3rd van for Safe Ride.
Okay. So those were the problems we were worried about with Safe Ride. Safe Ride is still overwhelmed, and we'd only be able to allocate about $6,000 to it, which would not be adequate for the 3rd van, which we'll talk about later in a moment. And travel isn't addressed, and travel has been systematically over budget, and we have a plan based on looking at the last 3 years of travel spending on how to get that back down that we will talk about when we move into our packages. So package 1, mandatory increases. I want to start off by saying I'm highlighting this one because SIFC's definition of mandatory increases is different than the one that we have to follow with ASOSU statute. So I'm offering both overviews of what that looks like. And there it is. And we...
Did you base your budget off the overall budget on the SIFC definition or the ASOSU statutes?
We had to do ASOSU because we're not really in like a position to just like ignore the statutes. So that's what you're seeing. But I mean, that said, like, that could always be subject to revision per changes to the statutes in the House or Senate. Okay.
Excellent.
Sure. And this is why we love our professional staff, and they're awesome. And we didn't want to embarrass them by putting pictures of them on our PowerPoint, but we did. So we just, that's what the OP is about, that's what the staff benefit's about. We've got some quality people, and we want to retain them. Okay, so Safe Ride, the van. I want to clarify a couple of things because I know that was confusing, the initial send. So average wait times on busy days are starting to top 30 minutes, and that's just not acceptable per what Safe Ride is and what it's about. On-campus students are going carless, and the on-campus population is going to grow by about 300. That number, well, I think it was 375 in the package. That number came from somebody in housing. But what's interesting for next year is the off-campus population is also going up. If you'll bear with me, this is a little complicated. You have a new class of people that is a lot bigger that graduated, that's going to graduate in 2016, 2015, moving off campus and replacing a graduating class that is a bit smaller, measurably smaller. Because in the last 4 years, this campus has seen some explosive growth. So we're seeing in both realms, the population of the campus is filling out. So some fast facts. In the fall, Safe Ride served an average of 68 riders per day, on average, roughly. Safe Ride's cost per ride, so per person getting a Safe Ride home, if we were to annualize based off the data we have, which is up to January, comes out to about $4.70 per person getting a Safe Ride. Does that make sense?
Is it per time they ride or just total use?
Oh no, just per ride, individual ride, regardless of how long the ride is. Yeah.
Okay.
That's just one metric of evaluating it. So January was a special case, which I'll get to in a second, but, or go back.
Oh, sorry.
What we did is Safe Ride has a lot of detailed logs on the number of students that use the service. And so we went through and looked at the number of unique individuals, as in like we don't double count a person, but the percentage of the student body that used Safe Ride in January, and it was about 5.5%. So 1 in 20 students on campus used Safe Ride in the last 30 days, which to me that's quite a bit. So these are Safe Ride's boundaries in Corvallis. And I'm going to admit I am not an expert on how that was set or why that was set, but
The oranges or the gray?
Good question. It
The
is
gray. The gray.
So, yeah.
So you don't know why there's that random thing sticking off the end?
I think that's connecting, I believe, if I recall from the Neighborhood Planning Commission meeting, there's some like RS-12 and RS-16 and RS-20 development down there, so lots of apartments. I think so.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
That sounds
Yep.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
there are a lot
okay.
of students who are picked up in that area.
Yeah.
Doesn't it have to do with the drive time as well?
Which is, yeah, so we don't go to like Philomath and places. Or Safe Ride doesn't go to Philomath because it's just too far. Even though students do live there, we would have to get a whole nother van and a whole nother system for it. So this was the best that we could do with 2 vans.
This one.
Okay, so we wanted to just show you what sort of is happening to Safe Ride on sort of a nightly basis. So this is nightly ridership from starting with the beginning of the year, going all the way to last week. So average nightly ridership started at about 65 a day and got as high as 95, but of course it's like the first few days of February. This has to do with some of the things that are going on our campus right now. But as you can see in general, and this has been confirmed to me. Did you have a hand?
It's actually the highest average is 95. The highest that it's gotten is about 180 per night.
Per night, okay. So we just wanted to let you know this is sort of what the service looks like, and you can tell there are certain days of the week where our demand is much, much higher than others, and those are the days in which having that permanent third van would be a lot more useful to help Safe Ride cut down on those high wait times.
Okay, so the profile of Safe Ride riders, these are the statistics for Safe Ride for individuals that are utilizing the service. And as you can see, a majority of the students do not have a car, which is over 81%, and 92% do have a vehicle in Corvallis. So that's why we want to implement third van possibly. So in order to reduce the amount of wait time, and also it'd be more convenient for students to utilize the service.
This was based on a one-day snapshot of riders. And so I would say there's probably a 10% margin of error either way for any of these stats. Just because we haven't had the time to get enough robust data, but I mean the percentage that's international, I mean that's pretty big. And even if it was as low as 26%, that shows that international students are disproportionately using the service. And we know that these are one of the target populations that Ed Ray is hoping to have increase on the campus for a variety of reasons. So Van 3 needs, this is generally what they look like. What we did is we assumed a moderate scenario of a mileage of 50 per van per night. So that can range. They could do in an entire night, one van could go 40 miles, it could go 70 miles. We just took the median here, hoping that was the best way to do it. I don't have mileage data. And we wanted to add some money for maintenance. So yeah, that's, yeah.
At least the submission gave us that maintenance fund number is at 8,000.
Uh-oh. Let me take a look at that. Why is this from?
It just keeps, it just froze or something.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have the position anymore.
A lot of them out for the position underneath that for expenditures or second.
Yeah, and
You wouldn't
where
need
is the
it.
task force person?
That person would be one at the top right there, the 32,000 below that.
Oh, they,
should be-
this, no, they, for this right here. I mean, they still have the graduate affairs task force director, which is under admin, but they just don't have.
They're not. They're not allowed to pay a position, now you go to the general fund, reclassifying the position.
Because they never even hired this position. Yeah.
It's hired right now.
Graduate affairs, no, not, but that was gonna be for GTA.
Yeah, not with the tuition remission.
Wait, what?
That's what the 30,000 went to, right? Would be to pay their
What were
tuition.
these numbers
They-
based
they
off
don't-
of?
they don't even-
For the maintenance?
When the
They don't
van
fill
broke
that
down
position.
and ASOSU had to pick up the cost.
Okay, I was just wondering why there would be almost double the cost on this sheet of.
There probably was a numerical error.
I'm
Which
sorry,
end?
it looks like I put up an old version. I am very sorry.
So the one that we were given here.
Is,
It's
that's
the
the
accurate,
accurate,
that's
yeah, I
accurate.
have literally 15 drafts of the budget.
And then
Yeah.
so adjusting the total increase to 31,500.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, what you have is accurate, is the latest.
So it's
All
a
right.
numerical error. Okay,
All right, go ahead.
next slide.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next package is about travel. So we're gonna do our travel package based upon the DC trip. So we have reviewed the last 3 years for the trips from 2010, 2011, and 2012. And as you can see, the amount of travelers has been consistent between 11 and 12 individuals. But as you can see, airfare has significantly increased. We can't determine if airfare is going to stay consistent, so we can't.
2012, you said 12 people?
Mhm.
Does
This
that-
was provided to us by, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No.
I just want to say, it was from the finance, what's his name?
Kurt Block?
Kurt.
Okay, because for some reason last year I remember hearing the number 14. Does,
Well, hearing the numbers probably not as accurate as that number.
Well, and
Well, I
I
was
don't
on
think
Ways
that
and Means
doesn't,
last year,
that
and they
doesn't
were
include
credit.
professional faculty that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be
That would
just
come out
like
of a different,
students.
put their professional development or their travel.
Okay.
Doesn't just matter.
And I think,
Like,
isn't the main
trash.
reason why that's so high too is because they bought the tickets like really late?
Yes, that's also partially part of the reason as well. So that's why airfare was almost significantly a lot double than 2011's trip, and lodging and prices have stayed the same, but airfare. So like I said, we can't determine how much airfare is going to be. Speaking from personal experience as an international student, plane tickets are increasing in cost, so we can only say they're always going to be about $6,000 per year. Question?
The reason the reimbursement went down last year too is because one of those 12 people didn't go.
Let's say, did you happen to check out ticket prices recently to maybe make your projection?
Well, plane tickets for a round trip right now are about $550 per individual.
The House committee wanted us to go with the least expensive of the last 3 years as the baseline run, which we made the decision, and that was just voted on by the House committee kind of arbitrarily.
Well, the lodging is based off where they decide to have the conference, so that really isn't.
Wait,
So-
this is for
so it fluctuates.
ASOSU trip.
Yeah, this isn't for, they're not.
Oh, this is,
Not
okay.
They're not asking for
Never
that.
mind.
The idea is that because we have a reserve fund balance, if the administration next year decides that LegCon is a priority, then there's money in there to take out.
Okay, so as you can see, our out-of-state employee travel, so the amount that was proposed last year, well, that was approved last year to say the least, is also being proposed for this year. And our out-of-state non-employee travel has been approximately about $12,000 due to because individuals that are associated with ASOSU would like to attend these type of trips or these conferences to be a part of it. And we're also proposing $5,000 for our out-of-state group travel as well. So as you can see, our proposed amount is approximately almost $20,000. But if you look at it in a different way, so approximately we actually propose to need about $9,000 for travel. But if we make cuts elsewhere,
Okay, so what we did is, that was a lot of money, so we tried to look at spending over the last couple of years, and we agreed that we could take these cuts. So a few of them are never used at all, like I believe hosting groups was not used at all last year. Can pull that up, and a couple of these also were under. So in the end, what we're asking for is a $2,100.16 increase for the overall line item. So a big chunk, the majority of the cost of making DC trip sort of solvent in the budget is coming from other aspects of travel.
So our next slide is about contingency fund. So what we intend on doing with our contingency fund is if like Amelia was saying, like if the next administration decides to choose to go to LegCon, they can use the funds, the excess amounts to go to LegCon and also supplement additional needs for a safe ride and other incidentals and other additional resources that are required as well.
Are there? Okay, cool. Yeah. So in overview, the budget we hope to have passed with all the packages. Student fee management is going up per their request. Administration would be going up per our internal bylaws requiring some pay increases. Travel would go up by $2,116. The budgets would get cut elsewhere. I want to just point out when you look at which of these have actually been spent. Government relations was under, campus affairs, environmental affairs, accessibility affairs. Most of them were under, and that's why we felt, we'd like to support all of these things, but they're not being used, and what we're finding is what the staff need and what they're actually able to do in a year isn't sort of consummate to how much we were giving them. And of course, this is the cut that we also discussed earlier. This should say negative 23.11%, but here's the numerical difference. The House Speaker was comfortable with that cut being made.
What is the pay of the speaker will be cut?
No, there's a line item that I believe is like technology, and it's used for like Skyping and stuff like that, and he's just like, we've never used it and we don't need it.
Like microphones and stuff for meetings
That's
and setups for like state of the students and things like
So
that.
yes. And then we have the increase to Safe Ride. And here's the final. And then OSA, which we will get to, is another package. And HSRC going up, which they will talk about, or we'll talk about.
We'll be there to talk about it.
Oh, okay.
Vanessa will, not me.
Okay. And then as a result, it is a 1.44% increase if the packages are approved. You want to go? Okay, so this is just an overview of what that looks like. This is coming straight out of the first page. And shall we move on to, unless I copied this one wrong too. Question, comment?
Yeah. So, for this number, the fee level, that should actually be the 1250 for, this shows the 2013, 2014 revenues. That should be 1250, right? Yeah. I mean, it's because the number for, that's the summer for, summer that happens in like 5 months, which was, that fee was approved by SISC last year.
Oh.
Okay.
It's pretty confusing, and we've had to adjust it for the MU already, but
Same summer first.
just to let you know, so like once you get done with your presentation, we'll wait and do it later, but we'll move that up to 1250, and then we'll reduce your fall, winter, spring fee to make it so your fee is this right same amount.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And in this case, we'd like to pass it on, and I think we're first giving it to HSRC.
Vanessa Clark.
Hello. The first thing I wanted to bring up while they were presenting, we just noticed a slight numerical error. The percentage increase that we are requesting is actually 6.9%, so it must have just been a little math error on the slide. But I did want to clarify that it's a 6.9 increase, not 7.48. Okay, so we have 2 decision packages that we're requesting increases. The first one, we feel that the subsidies that we provide students are the most important thing about our budget, and with enrollment increasing by 7% next year, or that's the projected increase, we would like our subsidies to be increased in accordance with that. So that 7% increase on just our budget line, or just our subsidy budget line item, would be about $13,298. And those subsidies are meal bucks, the student health insurance subsidy, emergency housing, and the graduate conference subsidy. And so those are the things that we provide that help students directly. The other decision package that we are requesting, we would like to have $10,000 toward establishing a service floor for meal bucks. The goal of our meal bucks program is that we would like to have students who qualify for meal bucks be able to purchase 1 hot meal per week on campus, and the average cost of that is about $63.25 per term. So we would like every student that qualifies for meal bucks to receive $63.25. Right now, based on current trends, in order to provide that next year, we would need an additional $41,919.36. Now, so the way that we're planning on achieving that, we are reapplying for a grant with the Women's Giving Circle, which is $10,000. We're also, with Decision Package 1, requesting that 7% increase, and if that decision package passes, that would be an additional $8,992 for meal bucks. And then we're also requesting $10,000 through this decision package. And then in addition, in order to make up the additional $12,900 needed, we have, we're contacting campus and community partners to try and seek donations and grants to cover that additional amount. And so that's basically what we're requesting.
And now there'll be OSU presenting, for Emily McLean will be presenting.
Yeah, thank you. Would you like to start here?
Yes,
I
please.
can be your clicker too if you.
Oh, that would be great.
Okay.
Hi, how are
we good to start?
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Emily McLean. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Student Association, and I really appreciate you allowing us to take a little extra time for this portion of the ASOSU budget. But I will try to be brief, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have. What I just handed out to the committee members is a budget packet that gives you information that starts with an introduction to OSA, our structure, as well as previous accomplishments that date back to decades ago. So that's why it's a little bit thick, but I do want to give you a good perspective about the organization that's been around for 37 years now. And the one really unique thing about this budget that's a part of the ASOSU budget is that it's probably one of the only budgets you fund that you don't fund fully. You're putting into a budget that's funded by other student organizations and campuses across the state. So you only pay a portion of the total cost to run the association that you're a member of as ASOSU. So I think that's something that's unique about it. So that's just a quick introduction, and you'll see included in there are also job descriptions of all the professional staff. That's in the back. And then there's a breakdown of our fee funding structure that I will go over in a second, but you can take that home with you or keep it going on to deliberations in case you need any additional information. So one thing that you have in the packet is the structure of OSA. So I just want to give a quick rundown. One of the most important things about the Oregon Student Association that was founded back in 1975 by students across the state of Oregon is that it's student-run and student-led. So up here you'll see the joint committee that is made up of our board members from all of our member campuses. We have the board of directors, which is made up of the student body president from a member campus, as well as their designee, who's usually a government affairs person. And then there's the Oregon Students of Color Coalition, and someone's about to say it. Which I didn't even say. I meant to start this by saying that one thing that you all did, thank you, I appreciate it. I'll try it again later. We'll do it at the end, and it'll be like cathartic and invigorating. But you all this year hosted the Oregon Students of Color Conference on campus. So I did want to say thank you to Oregon State for doing that, because we really appreciated you hosting the conference, and we actually used this space as well. So I actually know this room very well. And OSOC is made up of 2 members from each member campus as well, and they're decided on differently, but often by institutionalized positions within the executive offices that focus on multicultural affairs and issues that impact students of color. There's also the Oregon Student Equal Rights Alliance that was started in 2001. We're celebrating the 15th year of the OSOC board right now, and we'll be doing that at NWSLC, which is where it was started. But OSERA works on issues that impact the LGBT community, especially when it comes to our overarching mission at OSA, which is to ensure that all students in Oregon have access to an affordable college education, and all of these boards work to that end. The one position that's hired and fired by the staff is the executive director, which is my position, and then it's my responsibility to staff the positions of bookkeeper, communications director, legislative director, and organizing director. And as you'll see, the organizing director and the executive director are the 2 managers in the organization, and the organizing director oversees our field team. So we are an organization that advocates on behalf of students, run by students who steer the ship, make the decisions about what our priority issues are, and then the staff helps carry that out on the day-to-day basis. The next thing is our goals and objectives. OSA has a lot of priorities when it comes to serving folks, and that comes from our board members as well as our staff members. So as you saw the students at the top, we have board members in the room. Amelia serves on our board of directors. They set goals to make sure that we're first of all organizing to win victories for students, and that often takes place in the state legislature. We are the only and really most recognized student voice in the Capitol, making sure that if there's a meeting in this state, whether they say the word tuition, whether they're talking about financial aid, or if they're talking about policies that might impact the way that our schools work, there's always somebody from OSA in that room gleaning information and bringing that back to our board so that we can engage and have one of the most engaged student populations in the entire country. We also provide direct services, and that comes in the form of staff or board members providing actual technical support to campaigns on campus. So you saw me and other folks on campus working on voter registration this last year. So we try to provide technical assistance on those statewide campaigns, but also on campus campaigns as well. So we've helped folks build their constitutions from the ground up in student government, because a lot of our staff comes with a background of being involved in student government and advocacy. We also have training and leadership development, and I would draw your attention to the packet for committee members. I put in our list of trainings curriculum, which I'm really excited about, and it's split up into 5 categories, and then you'll see the trainings that we offer, and those are all unique trainings created by OSA staff that we're available to give anytime that they're requested, and we'll also probably encourage you to get some of those trainings before you go to the legislature and stuff like that. And obviously we do advocacy for students statewide, and I think I talked about that and addressed that just fine. So next, I just wanted to explain really quickly how the budget is created. It's created by the Board of Directors and the OSOC Board and the OSERA Board. We put a lot of time into it and make sure that they have the support they need, meaning that I help work on the budget, the bookkeeper does as well, and then a treasurer who is a student elected by the whole group works to create a budget based on the goals that the board members have. And we start that education on our budget since our board members turn over every year in August. So they get a chance to learn our line items, learn the budget, and set goals for what they want the budget to look like the next year. And then we vote on that after a couple months of discussion, usually in October, sometimes in November, in order to meet the deadlines of student fee committees around the state. We also engage with the Oregon University system and community colleges to determine enrollment. We do try to look at enrollment conservatively, so I do want you to know that as we've seen enrollment increases over the last year, we've been very aware that at some point those could drop off, which some OUS campuses have already experienced. Not as much at OSU, but that is one thing to note. And then the next thing is that every single, can you click one? Thank you. That every student in our budget formula pays the same amount individually. So the total budget of OSA is divided by the total enrollment of our member campuses. So the OSA budget, we believe, provides an equitable distribution of the costs, meaning that each student pays the same amount regardless of campus size. And as you saw in our structure, each campus gets 2 votes on that board, so they have that equitable representation, but also they're paying in individually as Oregon students the same amount. So our request this year is $1.42 per fee-paying student per term. We believe for the statewide services and also for the advocacy of making sure that we are ever present in every state agency meeting, capital meeting, and really staffing up, but also making sure that our board members are out there representing you, that this is a very good deal for a cost per term per student. And then obviously every campus pays a different amount based on your enrollment because there are different levels of enrollment at EOU versus OSU. Next slide. So here's a quick synopsis about the changes that you're seeing. The first that you saw earlier is the dues request of $91,000. The major changes that we've seen is that the overall enrollment number that we are looking at, dividing our total budget, has decreased some because of a lot of the campuses in OUS projecting, and we do get projections from the Oregon University system, so they're not a perfect science, but they are their best projections from their office to determine what enrollment will be. So we did want to be conservative to make sure that we are accounting for the fact that a number of campuses are actually likely seeing a decline, and even SOU saw a flatlining of enrollment this last year. So that's one reason you're seeing the dues go up. Yeah.
I'm wondering how that affects the request for us, because like we kind of give out money on our own projections. How
For enrollment?
Yeah, for enrollment.
No, we don't. Look.
I would imagine that we don't use identical enrollment projections,
So
so we try to guess our best, which is our budget divided by.
Okay, so you would just use OUS's projections
Yeah.
for this upcoming year, and
As
then
well as Lane Community College's projections.
okay, and then multiply that times the $1.42, and that's how much you would ask for,
These aren't
like,
the numbers.
during like, let's say, fall term of like fall 2012. That's how
Wait,
you
I
would.
didn't understand the end of the question.
So like how much you ask from ASOSU, like the dues from ASOSU in the fall. So it's basically they use OUS's projections for enrollment during that fall, multiply that by the $1.42, and that's what you ask for.
It goes budget divided by the total enrollment of all member campuses for that $1.42 amount. The total budget.
Theirs is at
By enrollment per term, they do overall enrollment
Okay.
for
So
the
it's,
entire
I see
academic
what you're
year.
saying. So yeah,
And
so
then-
it's, we're counting the students per term.
Yeah.
So that's why the enrollment number is different than yours, because we're looking at, one person is one person in fall and one person is one person in, winter.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Basically, they take all, have academic year, and they include this number,
Yeah.
the total number of people, and that's the number they get when they divide that number, and that's what we pay per student fee. But I
Okay.
don't understand why we'd have a different number, or why we'd have a different projection, because we both get our projections from OUS.
No,
Mm.
Jen doesn't do OU. No, it's,
She
these
uses
are
the
generated
university committee
from.
ones?
What?
She uses the,
It actually,
the Cambridge one or whatever?
you for your enrollment projections, you generate your, kind of internally within the AABC?
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're set by me, and, with the SIC chair every year on an annual basis. And what we do is actually look at the fee-paying students. But in OSA's case, because they can't get enrollment, directly from the institutions in the way that they built the budget, they use what's called the OUS publishes FTE enrollment, for each of the institutions. So to stay level with each of the institutions, they use that same calculation. So it doesn't then equate to your same student per term, but it's an allocation of a full dollar amount in a sense that you give to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I appreciate your explanation, and they do come out with the, those enrollment projections in week 4, but if you think about it also, they're projecting out to that next year, which is why the student fee process is an interesting process, because you all are having to plan so early before we have all of the concrete information. But I'm happy to talk through the differences in that if there's any additional questions.
OSA bases its numbers on one student, every student pays $1.42. We set the fee not knowing what the exact enrollment will be, and that changes the amount that each board will
No,
receive,
they
because
don't-
we don't change the fee per person with enrollment. So what if that enrollment ends up being higher or lower? How will that be handled by
Well, that's kind of
ASOSU?
it. Sorry, if you have an answer, that's fine.
Did my question make
I'm
sense?
happy
I'm
to-
not
go
sure I
ahead.
phrased it
It
exactly.
does make sense. So this is always an interesting little bit of a challenge. So you got to think of OSA as getting a lump sum of a dollar amount.
Yeah.
So then you convert it back, if you will, into your own dollar per student per fee. They, in a sense, give you a full allocation budget was what you would do, and they do that with all the schools. So they look at it, U of O pays this, Lane Community pays this, and then they are estimating, averaging, if you will, $1.42 per term per student.
Okay.
But when you actually look at our enrollment, it's gonna be different.
Yeah.
So that's why they package it in a whole amount and then divide it evenly, because that's the one medium that they can use, is that OUS enrollment, to get each institution at a fair, a dollar amount. So when you actually allocate to them, you're allocating a full dollar amount.
So instead of the,
So
how we usually approve the fee level, right?
Yeah, I got what's gonna happen. So they've taken what they need total, divided it
Double
by
check
all the
that.
campuses to be one person,
Yeah,
$1,
understand.
$1. Then it became based off that and based off OSU's projected
Yes.
enrollment.
Oh,
Came
no,
up
yeah,
with
I
a
get
number
that.
which was
I'm just
then
making sure that-
divided again.
Those
And-
amounts in
okay.
this budget.
There's
The
two
projected
conversations
number
happening, and I think
comes
they're
from
both
1.42.
important to connect, which is OSA is not gonna get more from Oregon State if your enrollment goes up. We're asking for an isolated amount, and we wanna give you an understanding of what our total budget looks like. So the $1.42 per term isn't gonna equal out the way that you do, but if you look at OSA's budget in a vacuum, that's how much the total OSA budget gets to, and I'll show you the Excel in a second, so you can take a look at the Excel, and I'll walk you through it, just so
So
you
whatever
understand.
happens, you guys are gonna get
That
the-
amount.
that amount.
Period.
Even if, no matter what happens with enrollment, this is just based off. Okay, I get what's
Because you all are
happening.
gonna vote on your budget, it's gonna go through all its final processes, and you're gonna determine a final and total fee, right? Which will fluctuate some, but OSA's portion of that within the ASOSU budget won't change. And we won't say, oh, enrollment went up, so we should get a certain amount more.
Okay.
So this is a solid, permanent, no changes request.
This is the dues that costs Oregon State to be a member of OSA.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. How are we feeling about that? Okay. So I wanted to explain just a couple of the reasons for those changes, and I'll show you the Excel in a second. So we made modest staff salary increases, very modest, within like the $500 range per year. And that's because our students acknowledged that we had a member campus leave, Mount Hood Community College, and that's where most of this increase is coming from. So we actually didn't change the budget that you all approved last year very much.
Okay, I was gonna ask that, so looking through the increases, I was like, I don't see where all these increases are coming from.
They're not coming out of the
That
line
makes
items.
sense.
So this is accounting for the fact that we have one less member campus, and that was, they paid over $40,000 in dues, and Mount Hood Community College has had some real financial strains, and so they're not included in this. So most of the increase that you're seeing, I think it was from $1.17 to $1.35 or 36, is all just the fact that there's less income. But the changes we made are the remaining like 7 cents. So I would wish that I were here telling you that there's a 7-cent increase, but I'm not. And that's one thing I want to explain is that I looked back in previous fiscal years, and the last time a member campus was added, hindsight being 2020 and this happening when I was a sophomore in college and not working for OSA, when they added a member campus, they added that member campus and didn't increase their expenses to match that campus. They actually brought the dollar cost down for every member campus. I have no idea why they did that. I think it's a poor choice because when a campus chooses to leave, then there's no obvious place to pull, like an additional staff person or the cost of travel to that campus. Does that make sense? So that's why you're seeing a large increase. I'm not happy about it, but that is where it's mainly coming from. And I'll show you the other changes as well. And they came in the form of, I call them the 3 T's, travel, technology, and training and development. Those are the only places that folks did want to target some changes. I think for pretty obvious reasons. The governor created the Oregon Education Investment Board as well as the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. These are 2 sets of meetings that we have never had to travel to in the past. Adding $1,000 to the travel line item increases our ability to take at least 20 to 30 more trips, hopefully, depending on if they're in Salem or Eugene for our staff. But also in order to be able to get out to non-member campuses who have expressed interest in joining as members of OSA. So I think it's a strategic investment to hopefully actually bring more members back in. And then that's also why we were wanting to increase training technology at 500, just so we could do things like have subscriptions to our conference call line, to our Skype line, and also keep maintaining our server and our computers and things like that. And training and development, the students voted to increase that in order to be able to continue to provide at least 1 or 2 opportunities for staff members for professional development a year, usually just 1 local training, and then also to run our board retreat, which is our main and first training for board members every August. And then they also created a new line item. This is our only new line item for the year, which is a contingency fund. It's very small if you look at our total budget, which is over $500,000, but we actually haven't had a contingency fund for unexpected costs before. We have a lot of unexpected costs come up, and we end up having to very much underspend in one line item in order to compensate for that. So, and I'll give one example and then take your question. We weren't able to rent the church, the Methodist church next to the Capitol this year like we usually do for our lobby day. And we're having to go to a different space, which costs more money. So these are unexpected things that hopefully we can cover. And moreover, if there were to be an issue or a crisis of some kind, folks not being able to pay their dues or something like that, we could at least cover a couple, bills or things like that if there were an issue. And they're just wanting to start that at a $2,000 level. So this is the same increase that you saw in the ASOSU budget as well.
Yeah. So that 2,000 number, generally for contingency funds here, we have it based off 2 months expenses. Just wondering what you based that $2,000 number off of?
It's not based on that. I wish that it were. That would be much higher, and you would not like it. Because our payroll monthly is 10 times that at least. But they negotiated it as a group of OSU board members, PSU, U of O, LCC, Western, as, can on your campuses, can we pass some kind of contingency fund? And they felt the 2,000 was more of seed money, just to start having some sort of level of reserve for the organization. So it was a conversation that they had to say, this means we could probably cover a few unexpected costs, but also start planning for the future in case there were to be any issues.
And what happens if you underspend in a line item? What happens to the money from that line item? Usually the way that it pans out, just so you know, at the end of our fiscal year, it's very rare that we're not just 0-0 at the end, like everything leveling out. But we would have some rollover for that next year that we would keep in the contingency fund line item, but we 100% spend all of our other line items. This is the first year we've had a contingency line item, so I don't know how it will interact or if that will grow, but all our other line items we fully spend 100% each year.
although I would say that the ones that we haven't, then we come back to you and tell you what the actuals were. And I've presented 2 separate years now outside of this. This is my 3rd year presenting the OSA budget, and I have made cuts based on actual spending. If I've seen underspending in a line item, I'll come back and tell you and say that you should cut it. But I know that we're running long, so let's see. I think that it would probably be best to show you the Excel budget. Is that probably right? I'm reading the time.
Do you think we need to see it?
No.
Yeah, I think we're fine, because it's
Yeah.
reaching 35 minutes, so I
Okay.
think we,
Yeah.
get the idea.
I-
behind it and-
Okay, perfect. So I emailed the packet that you all have, and then also this Excel to Amelia. So if you do want it, please let me know, and I'm happy to talk you all through it. And I'll just show you it has 3 tabs. It has the line item tab, it has a campus organizer tab, which isn't relevant to this campus, and then it has the funding distribution model tab that can take you through our math. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes, thank you.
So my first question comes to do with working capital. So the report I got for the executive report in fall, it said you guys had about $244,000, and now all of a sudden you have only $204,000, which I'm concerned about, because I don't know if the number that you're giving us is accurate, because it's very rounded. Like, it just says you have $174,000, or is that what it is? I don't, wherever that went. Yeah, it says you have $174,000, which is a very general number, when a working capital would be a very exact number, at least if you get it from like AABC. And there's no reason that you should have spent any from working capital, because so far through the budget, you guys are doing fine. Like, it's not like you've been in a deficit at all throughout this year, really. Yeah, so I mean, I'm just wondering if, when, it says contingency fund balance as of 1/15.
Yeah, well, I mean, it fluctuates. I mean, like the previous month before, it was about $320,000, and then it fluctuated to that. So, no, I'm saying like for our contingency fund balance, like it will fluctuate from like the month previous before we got the values, it was about $300,000. So it fluctuates on a month-to-month basis. So it's not consistent all the time. So that's how we got our values for the last one for our updated.
Yeah, let's say, through the current fiscal year, you guys' income is in excess of your expenses by about $400,000. So that's, I guess, where I'd get a concern, because if anything, I imagine this fund balance would be higher than, instead of lower. Yeah, so that's just a concern I'm gonna have, and like, so I suggest you getting like the fund balance that you guys have currently right now. I don't know. Did they request fund balance?
We send out all the fund balances at the in August.
Okay, they haven't requested one.
To the finance director.
They didn't request one as of January 15th.
We don't do an update because we do it at the end of.
Okay.
And fund balance, depending on what you're looking at, that's just determined at every end of the fiscal year.
Okay, so like, let's say they say contingency fund balance as of January 15th, 2013.
I'm guessing it was probably a snapshot of their fund at that particular point in time.
Okay.
So it depends on when payroll was pulled and whatnot. That can fluctuate pretty heavily, and when the fees were transferred in.
Okay.
So, you know, if you want a ballpark figure of how to get to that, you would take the June 30th working capital report we did and compare it to where they are within their budget and their cost tab.
Like with this? Okay, so I can get a generally accurate one by like maybe go all the way through December and find out what it would be at January 1st?
Right.
Okay. I can do that pretty easily. Cool. Thank you. For your mandatory increases, at least I guess I'll just go into the admin budget. We're having student pay and regular pay going up by 5.9%. I was wondering if you could explain to me how you arrived at $260,000 for that line item. Because minimum wage is going up by about 1.7%, and all your pay is linked to minimum wage, so I don't really see why student pay would go up more than minimum wage. So that's, I guess, yeah, if you can explain to us how you got to that number.
Based on the amount of members that are currently in ASOSU, which is about approximately 23 individuals that work with our organization, so we based upon the values off of that, due to the fact that with minimum wage increasing, that we want to be able to have enough cushion in case of the student pay is going to go over for next fiscal year, so that's why we increased it by 5.89%.
That wouldn't justify that.
Yeah, I don't see really.
Why, and like, how did you come with 5.8%? That's not.
I mean, even that'd be taken into account like pretty large increases, let's say.
Well, and if your pay is linked to minimum wage, then even if you tried to give yourself that cushion, you wouldn't increase by over 4%. So, how did you pick that number?
We put that number, okay, so this is how we calculated it. So for the minimum wage that's increased, so we looked at the amount of pay that was from last year, and we calculated to the pay for like a month-on-a-month basis for every individual according to their positions. So we based all that calculated for a year, and then we made the values projected off of that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, but how did you come with that projection? Because right now you're saying, okay, here's a projection, here's actual values, right? Here's what we know the increase will be, and then, but you're not actually saying how you came up with that.
Oh, yeah, because we didn't justify it in our
In 2011, 2012, they ended up going over by about $20,000.
Was
I get it, we can explain.
that?
Yeah,
because
I'm not
of
sure.
The issues with the
Increasing
ASOSU president's actions. I don't know.
So have you seen this, okay, so can you give us like a trend analysis then of previous years? So you can go back, not looking at just last year's administration, but maybe 4 years, 5 years beyond that, to see if there's been a trend of overspending, and if that would be a reason to choose a large increase, like 5.8% or whatever the exact percentage that you use, to base your projection off of. Because otherwise, I mean, that's, almost triple of what you're actually expecting your increase to be. Does that make sense? Okay.
I mean, also, because it's like, your student pay, you should be able to determine exactly really what your student pay is every year,
Yeah.
because it's all linked to a certain amount. I would, at least what I would recommend would us to, cut the increase, because I don't agree, I don't see the justification for it, and I would really work with Jen at AABC to try to maybe figure out a better number and give more justification to us. Because I don't really see, it's not like this is not a line item that should go over either, because it's a stipend, right? So it's not like you guys clock in for work. It's something that is, you get a certain check every month regardless of how many hours you work, correct? Yeah. So I mean, it's something that should be very determinable every year. Okay, let's move to Safe Ride real quick. So I'm curious, does Safe Ride have a third van right now?
Yes.
Okay, so is that maybe a reason why they went over?
Do you mind if I'm, like, people like to answer this? Is it okay if I help answer questions?
Oh, please,
Is
yes,
that okay?
yes.
Okay.
So that's
No, I can't.
yeah, so it doesn't make sense why they did it that way. It shouldn't be that high, so that's what Brad's saying, you can just cut that and they can redo it and then come back.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
The other thing too is that Safe Ride is part of that ASOSU. I don't know how much this matters, but they actually do clock in. They're not on stipend, the Safe Ride employees.
That should be in
Okay,
ASOSU
cool.
admin, it should be, pretty sure that's in the Safe Ride.
Good. Okay,
Yeah.
just checking.
Is it that you get, Safe Ride already had a third van?
So currently, we requested for funding for a third van, and we saw an increase in ridership. And so what we have right now is we got enough budget so that we could have, we have early shift and we have a late shift. And currently we have enough funding for one shift that can have a third van. So one shift doesn't, it's the late shift does not have a third van and the early shift does. At this time, we've kind of seen that we could adjust, because ridership starts to pick up at 7 and is pretty consistently busy until about 11 o'clock. So right now it's from 6 to 10 and we're thinking about moving that over to 7 to 11. But so right now we do have a third van for one shift. And that was an adjustment that we asked for from Amelia from our funds.
It wasn't from our fund balance, it was, we cut positions and so we had money
Yeah.
available that was not from the fund balance.
Was your increased ridership based off year-long increase or based off the recent increase due to events off campus?
Compared to past years.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Well, no, I mean,
It's been
I get that.
Consistent, I mean, even fall was higher than last fall. If that's what you.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Did you base that off
Yeah.
the year-long average or based off the previous month's increase? And it's based off the year-long average. Okay.
I think that if it was based off of the past month, that it would be quite a bit more.
Yeah.
So we're gonna see how that goes, but that's not what it's based off of right now.
Yeah, so you do expect to be over budget then for this year?
Over the Safe Ride budget, but within the ASOSU budget.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
just
over the
specif-
line item, yeah.
Specifically, Safe Ride does expect to be over.
Yes.
Do you have any, because I noticed you're probably similar to 2011, 2012?
It'll be lower.
It'll be a little lower than the actuals from last year?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't know if you had any questions about the substantial amount that we went over last year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I had questions. You use these vans from motor pool?
Right.
And how's maintenance associated with them?
So what happened was we had an incident where maintenance was not kept up on one of the vans routinely. There wasn't an oil change made, and a motor blew in one of the vans, and we had to pay to get it towed away and replace a motor in a van. And yeah, at the very end of last year.
So motor pool requires you all to do maintenance?
They did the maintenance. We had to pay for replacing the motor that blew up.
So it's their fault that they didn't change the oil, so then you paid for the motor?
I think that part of our, go ahead.
I can jump in here, actually.
Okay, please.
The way that maintenance works is that the van's supposed to get checked every 5,000 miles, and so it becomes our responsibility to call down to maintenance and let them know that it needs to come get checked. And in this case, that didn't happen, and so the van went way over that limit, and that's why there was a failure.
Okay. So normally though, they do all the maintenance?
Yeah, if there's something wrong with the van, we'll call them and they'll come take care of it.
All right, so then why are you requesting $8,000 for maintenance if that shouldn't happen?
We get flat tires. In previous years, vans have been not the highest of quality, and so we've had issues every year getting vans serviced. This year, however, we've had a little bit of nicer vans. There's still, our mobility van is very old, and that one breaks down a lot.
And so beyond the maintenance that motor pool be required, then there's additional costs. Like, so something like a flat tire would be a cost associated within Safe Rides maintenance budget rather than like.
Yeah,
Okay.
see, that's my issue with $8,000 requesting for something that you guys shouldn't be paying for, if you understand where I'm coming from with that.
I have a question then around transactions within Safe Ride and motor pool in regards to maintenance. It sounds like obviously this has been a point of contention possibly, or a difficult process dealing with maintenance. What is there, like, is there an MOU or some sort of contract that allows you to be able to kind of like cite something specific whenever something does break down, for you to say, hey, look, that way, say maybe you have a new student employee next year and they don't really know when something happens and they're in charge of, you know, dealing with that or navigating through that conversation between people actually who are supposed to be performing maintenance. Do you have anything like that currently?
Beyond a verbal
Yeah.
one? No.
We should definitely put that on a list of things.
We should. That's definitely a good suggestion.
I mean, honestly, that's probably in the contract that you guys sign with Motor Pool when you rent these vehicles, is the maintenance part. So, I mean, I don't know how they would look at an MOU, but.
But if it's within a contract, then you can just pull up the contract and do something that you can have like readily available to yourself in case.
There's rental agreements with.
Yeah, that's what that.
I mean, I can assist you with getting access to those.
Okay, that would be
That's what,
great.
if they already exist, then yeah, just getting access to them. But
So, I mean, that's something that I would probably recommend to be dropped out of the budget request for that would be the $8,000 for maintenance, because, yeah. So is ASOSU planning to go to LegCon this year?
We are.
And not next year?
We are not allocating money for LegCon for next year.
Why are you planning to go this year and then not allocating money for next year?
Because it is not a priority, it wasn't a priority for the budget to be allocated, and if they choose to go, they can, use the fund balance if they get it passed through Ways and Means.
I guess I see a little disconnect on that.
So this year, we're planning to go to LegCon not using funds allocated for LegCon, but through we cut positions, and so we were able to pay for it without using the fund balance, which still has to be passed through Ways and Means and the student advocate signing off on it as of our joint bill that we had passed.
position specifically, are you referring to like
You cut?
graduate affairs with the
The-
classification of the?
Yeah, so that money and then the student
The student
internship
board.
advocate, which we did not hire for, and we also cut the executive director of services
Right.
and 2 assistants to the advocates.
The executive
Okay.
director of services, didn't that just change in title?
No, we
Okay,
cut
that
one.
was cut totally.
It was cut totally, but we put
The
that
role
position,
was-
like the job duties that were left from it, into the executive director of community resources, which was formerly
Okay.
executive director of campaign resources. That make sense?
Okay, yeah.
Do you know how many people you're planning on taking this year?
To LegCon,
Yes.
around 10, but it's still tentative.
Who's taking on the role of doing that as you don't have a director right now and
They're
your
already hiring.
assistant is in
Yeah, but
DC?
it's a process.
Tickets
that
should
would-
be being bought now. It's February.
Yeah,
Buying a
you-
ticket
It's
to
what, in
DC
like-
over
The-
spring
And you should
break.
have
6
everyone
weeks.
started to be
Over
trained, they
spring
should already
break.
started the process for the application process, things like that.
Wait,
So
this
it
isn't
is-
the DC trip.
I know, this is.
LegCon.
spring
Which
break.
is over spring break.
Yeah.
The director of government affairs is working on it currently, as she is in DC, but she's still working for ASOSU.
Wait.
She's working on it, and
LegCon was the
Tori.
weekend before finals.
she's working for ASOSU because she's on an internship through OSU, so
Okay.
she's still an OSU student.
Gotcha.
The applications for the director of government relations position are due tomorrow, and the hire should be done relatively quickly.
Wait, I thought that LegCon was the weekend before finals, the 14th through 18th.
This is what I want to say.
to say about this.
Speak up, please. Well, I mean, that just meant gonna talk now.
Okay, so yeah, I've taken over planning for the logistics of the Legicon trip, but we're still waiting on some like technicalities with the application, because I heard today that the application doesn't have the correct dates on them. So like once we get that fixed, it's gonna be a matter of just interviewing the people, because there's already the interest in the applications and people are waiting on them. And so everything is booked. Like, we're scheduled for the conference. We have 10 people to take if we want to take that many, but that's tentative. And so the only thing that we need to do now is interview the people that want to come.
So you've paid registration for 10 people?
No, we haven't paid registration, but we've put in the request for it, and we haven't paid for it because the money hasn't been approved yet.
Yeah. Correct.
Through Ways and Means, but right. What's the question?
When is
Ledge,
Spring break.
What are those dates?
It's,
Yes.
yeah.
It's the 14th through the 18th.
That's spring break.
14th through the 17th.
It's not.
Oh.
I thought that was
The rally, yeah, I can't tell
Yeah,
before you.
that's the weekend before finals week.
Yeah, I just wanted
It's
to
a
clarify.
Thursday through a Sunday.
It's usually spring break, but it's my understanding based on what I've heard from USSA staff that this year Oregon lost out. That they were arguing, over when the most appropriate date would be, and a lot of the other states have finals earlier. So usually it is spring break, but this year Oregon's in school later than some of the semester schools in other states.
So that's in 5 weeks then?
From tomorrow.
And the tickets and hotel have not been bought?
Well, you can't purchase any of it without actually having your funding approved in the first place. So
it's not an ideal situation. No.
I mean, and it's
certainly
not something that we have. I mean, it's ASOSU
Okay.
House Ways and Means, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Does SIC have
I mean,
anything to do with that?
well, I mean, it'd be something that would be like, it does seem like a good idea, and I mean, we could just cut that up next year's, for example.
But if they're not asking for
I-
anything, so yeah, but if they
Well,
were.
I mean,
the
but
money is
if
there.
they're gonna
You
use it
just
from that
have
fund
to
balance anyways,
increase.
Yeah.
so it's something that
Well, you could
essentially.
you could include part of the increase for travel out of fund balance then automatically, rather than,
Yeah.
yeah.
When is NWSLC?
March 1st through 3rd.
Okay.
So on Safe Ride, the vehicle, where'd it go? Vehicle usage and equipment use charge, is that strictly the rental from motor pool?
I believe so.
Yes,
I
it
believe
is.
So that would be like the cost per month plus the variable mileage? Okay. And how did you arrive at the like the variable amount?
For the mileage?
Yeah.
I took the median of the ranges that were provided, yeah.
Okay.
What did you say the median was?
I put it at 50.
And 50 is low.
Whoops.
That's
Wait.
very low compared to what we do nightly. We're closer to 100 per night.
'Cause
Have you
per-
looked into buying your own van?
Enterprise.
No, yeah.
We have a contract with
But-
Enterprise.
That's an idea.
We could certainly discuss it, but
It's like we had, Tuesday, we can't really.
No, we're not. It wouldn't be
No.
suggesting it for right now, but
No,
it
it'd
would
just be
be
like,
telling them to consider it next
That would might
year.
save a lot of money.
Yeah.
It might if you, unless you're factoring in maintenance and upkeep on the van that we have to do ourselves.
Yeah.
Who we would pay to be doing
Sure,
that.
it's here.
and all the liability
Yeah,
of having
very,
your own
very
car.
expensive.
Yeah.
It might be
One
possible
thing
that they
a
also
motor
are
pool
not
will
legally
cover
allowed to
with a lot
own.
of-
not a student.
I believe
Our
technical
contract.
stuff and maintenance is
OPE
typically
Mhm.
included in such.
Do you want to say something on buying your own car for ASOSU?
I think you can always do an assessment of it, but
Yes,
the
okay.
things, you are still covered with the state insurance, so it's
Okay.
not like you
Okay.
have different insurance
can't
that
figure out what
applies
it
or
is
any of
either.
that sort of thing. But, I think there's
And
always
it's going
room
up like
for
$20,000.
improvement in maintenance areas and discussion there, and who owns or doesn't own the vehicle, and the process is there, so.
If SIFC wants us to look into that, we certainly can.
We're trying to figure out what the student fee management position is.
So that, I'm sorry.
It's listed under mandatory increases too.
Yeah, it's like assessments and stuff.
Mhm.
That's their mandatory increases, basically.
Well, what exactly?
Are you wondering why it went up so much?
Yeah, I'm wondering why it went up by $20,000 and why there's no position like I
It's
don't.
not a position.
It's not a position.
It's a fee
It-
from OUS.
It's like,
basically.
that's like their mandatory charges through OUS and other things like that. And it went up so much because it's been calculated incorrectly in the past. Wasn't that one of the reasons why? Yeah.
Okay, we were trying to figure out what that was.
So I just want to get around to, I guess, some justification behind Safe Ride. So on this weekly trip, it shows November 1 through 7. It shows about 6% were from off campus to on campus, and the rest were from places on campus to off campus or off campus to off campus. And it seems like a lot of justification lies around the mandatory residency for freshmen, and like they can't really have cars either. But really, at least from what I can tell, that would really only affect people who, like, those freshmen are the people who are going to end up back on campus. So not really going off campus for the most part.
We can assume that. The problem is, with that data, we don't know where the folks actually lived. We do know, though, that about a quarter of the current population that does use Safe Ride are on-campus people. That was not tied to, so we don't know if somebody that was going off campus, if they were going to a frat meeting or whatever. That I can't verify. Yeah, we're kind of going off an assumption, but did you want to add to that?
Even if there wasn't the freshman live on campus proposal for this term, for next year, we would still be asking for a third van because it has been so significantly underfunded in the past couple of years that it's time that I think that the Safe Ride staff are overburdened as it is. And even now with like the third van and all the things that have been happening in January, that's like a separate issue. And unless I'm not speaking on behalf of all of the Safe Ride people who are here who can talk on it better, but they have had challenges working with only 2 vans.
And also, I guess, and again, this is an assumption and it may not be true, but it would appear that because, right, that number is so low because all those folks do have cars, and now none of them are going to have it. So.
And another thing is that we don't have, so like, the Corvallis transit system is like, what, 7 or 8, and is super inconsistent and just is not very convenient at all. And we don't have on-campus transportation at night. And so a lot of the times, especially with recent events, but even if you took that out, people want a safe way to get across campus, even though it might not seem like, oh, it's, it's just a couple, it's not that far away from, wherever you're going, MU to a, dorm or whatever, but going from place to place on campus might, we see that being in demand, in much higher demand with students on campus. We think that if there is some sort of, if Safe Ride's able to provide that transportation across campus, that one, it will definitely reduce any chances of assault or sexual assault being much higher than it would be if people were just walking around, and vandalism and just people, things like that. It's just definitely a much more safe projection than assuming that people are just going to be, on campus doing their thing. And then also if people don't have cars and they're on campus, students who have cars and live in the dorms currently, if they're going to go off campus and do things like they do now, the next year if they don't have cars, Safe Ride is definitely going to be used a lot more to do such things. So on campus to off campus will be significant as well.
Because 80% of the ridership are folks that don't own cars, but again, it could be, plus or minus a certain amount. We assume because that number is going up, that chart is going to look very different in November of next year. But I see your point.
And on top of that, last year, we got $2,000 more than what the year's budget was previously. And that's that in itself was not very reflective. Last year, it started out with 2 vans and they moved up to 3 vans because of the increased ridership that they saw. And unfortunately, that turned out to going over budget. But I think that should be evident that there needs to be more money this year so that we don't have to go over budget and we can have that third van I think as enrollment increases, so will the safe ride usage, obviously, and with the increase in international students, that's also going to contribute to a lot more riders.
I think the international student piece is underappreciated, frankly, by the administration, the campus administration, as much as just in general of what's going to happen, because that is a population that is going to explode, and those folks generally don't drive, and it's an issue.
And right now, we only run during school, while school is in session, minus finals week. But international students live on campus 365 days a year, so we're already not being able to provide those students with transportation during breaks and during finals week and things like that. So this is already us kind of sacrificing. I mean, it's not like we have an option, but we don't get to serve those students who are here 365 days a year and here over breaks and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
Why don't the vans serve during finals week if that's going to be one of the highest times that students are like spending extra time on campus, and especially at like later hours than normal?
We do work during finals week.
Yeah, we have begun doing that.
It
It's
says-
hard to staff it.
It says weeks per term 11 too, so that would include.
Oh,
finals
I
week.
just
But yeah,
heard
I imagine
you
it'd be
say that
staffing
you
would be
didn't
probably the
serve it
biggest
during
issue.
Yeah. No, it's really hard to staff it. It's almost on a volunteer basis if we can get people to work.
They are paid, but they are
They're
volunteering
paid,
their
but
time.
they have to volunteer to take those shifts because finals week is busy and being a student comes first. So it's kind of a hard balance to deal with, but.
How do you reach the $15,000 of labor to cover the third van?
Let me pull that up. Sorry, the cursor on my computer is broken, so I have to scroll up.
You can also
Would it-
this.
Oh, cool. Well, then I'll just upload it up there because that was getting really annoying. Did you email me this one?
So I'll just pull up my email.
Yeah.
This is gonna be right to I think site is- Okay, so while we're uploading this, is there any other questions?
What's the cost per mile?
30 cents. I think for that's the full passenger.
Yeah, I think that.
It depends. It's 30 cents is for the 12 passenger. I don't know what it is for the mobile or for the mobility van.
I think it's a little bit less, maybe like 40.
And that's 50 miles a day?
We can look at it.
Is it lower?
That's their lowest.
Mileage per day. So all 3 vans are around 100 miles a day right now? A night?
That's like a peak number.
So let's go weekly average.
I don't have numbers in front of me. Like I don't have them off the top of my head. You can ask some of the drivers that are here right now. I'm sure maybe they have a better.
Yay,
drivers.
thanks for coming.
A weekly average?
Yeah.
Per van or all three vans put together?
Per van. Yeah.
Honestly, we usually do 70, 80 per night per van.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of back and forth.
Mhm,
And with 3 vans, it makes it easier because if you think about it, 2 vans, one van covers all North Corvallis and then the other van covers all South Corvallis. And then that's why our wait times have been so bad. Like, how are we supposed to effectively help OSU and keep campus safe when our wait times are 30 minutes or 45 minutes or 50 minutes? Like, we can't do our job effectively if it's like that.
Yeah.
And
Okay, yeah,
people
so
end
we
up-
should
just
increase that to
as a
6,000.
note, I know it gets a little bit on the softer side of people, but when wait times are more than 20 minutes, dispatchers frequently get
Second calls.
never mind, I'd rather just walk. And so I think that it's important with all the safety things that we're dealing with. If wait times are kept between 10 and 20 minutes, which is still hard because if it's really busy that night, you wait for 5 minutes on the phone for your call to get answered. Then when your call gets answered, it's like, okay, now let me get you a wait time. So you're on the phone for like 5 or 10 minutes waiting for that. Then you get a 10, 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50-minute wait time depending on how busy it is. that's how long you have to wait to get a ride, and then however long it takes for you to get to where you're going is anywhere between 10 and 50 minutes to get to where you're going. So that's a very long process, because they pick you up, then they have to go pick someone else up, drop them off on the way, and then it's just a process. We try and use as little mileage as possible to get everybody, and that sacrifices with the amount of time. And so what typically happens is students call and say, what's your wait time? And if they know how Safe Ride works, and it's more than 20 minutes, they say, never mind, I would much rather walk. I would get there a lot faster. And that's definitely
Yeah. I agree with, I think third van's good. I'm just trying to figure out, I think we're gonna reallocate like some of the $8,000 to maintenance to increasing the variable amount for that van, because if you're just estimating 50 miles, then it's probably low.
Plus, if you don't actually need the maintenance cost in there, then it's easy.
Yeah.
And with more students, if we're running 3 vans right now and that ends up being average, then next year with more students, that average mileage is going to go up as well.
And that's something you can reevaluate and then present next year.
The reason why it's not in there is that they had sent us a separate set of information on which we based that estimation.
Oh, the 15.
Yeah, I don't have it with me, but I can get it to you.
That'd be good.
Yes, like tonight.
Cool. So I guess I still have serious qualm with like the idea of going to LegCon this year and then saying, well, not LegCon next year. It's like I don't really see how you say, well, it's important that we should go this year, and then next year's administration, nah, we don't think it's important enough for them to go.
Every year, different administrations have different perspectives on LegCon. I don't think it's appropriate to allocate money for LegCon because it's controversial at OSU whether or not it's worth spending money on. I think it's important. It's a priority of our administration, but I don't think it's fair to say that should be next year's priority as well.
Well, if it's priority for your administration, why are you deciding that it's
not worthy for next year?
Because they can get it. I mean, if it's important enough, there is money in the fund balance.
But let's say this fund balance is not just something you can go in and just like,
But
okay.
That's what you're doing this year, right? 'Cause you weren't.
No, we're not using the fund balance. We've cut
Actual
positions.
budget savings.
Well, I mean, essentially, it's using fund balance.
It would be next year's fund balance.
Yeah, I mean, it's using fund balance.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing still.
It was money allocated for this year.
Allocated for the year, but it's.
That would go into fund balance, and then they're reallocating that money into a different
Last year was
fund.
the first year interns went to LegCon also.
Yeah.
So it's not something that historically.
I think that's where we're coming from, that it isn't something that, it's not like the DC trip that you go, like it is expected that you go every year. This is only the second year. And yeah.
Speaking from my own experience, so I don't even remember what year it was, but what year was I director? 2010, 11. So I was the first executive director of government relations. I found a file that had information about USSA. OSU had not gone in a period of 5 to 8 years because they had a falling out. So I went to their Congress that summer, and as I was instructed by that administration, we were to find out if we wanted to be in a relationship with USSA, what that would look like, because we're already members through OSA. And I came back and said, I think that we do need to be in a partnership with USSA, but at this point, it is not something that we specifically are benefiting from. Their trainings are not advanced enough. OSA has much better models right now, so the one thing that we can get from them is a good relationship. So their structure is important, but what interns could get out of that wasn't great at that point. Then the next year we sent 4 people to LegCon because those 4 people were on the USSA board of directors. And then last year they decided to send interns, and I wasn't that involved with last year's administration, so I'm not sure why, and I know I'm not involved with this year's executive administration either, but historically it has been kind of discussed that USSA was not something that we would benefit from because they looked to OSA as a model, they looked to ASOSU as a model. That's where they were pulling their trainings from, so why would we send and spend that much money to have people professionally developed when
they were getting it here before. So they were going as leaders. We should be sending our leaders to help develop USSA. So in my own opinion, I think that it would be important if you wanted to prioritize LegCon, that you would prioritize it for staff who can go and build USSA and help to make them stronger and to help that organization in general. And they have a lot of things going from there. Is an important part that comes from them, but I don't think that it's professional development. And that is my own opinion, but it also comes from a very long experience with USSA and being involved in the DC trips in general. And I think it's important to have that stated because I think that it speaks to where this money should be looking in the future as well.
Madison, I think you make a really valuable point. Like, it's not like we're sending interns there for, like, solely for professional development, because like you said, a lot of what they do, like, we already see within ASOSU and OSA. However, I think that, like, from my experience, like, going as an intern, like, I benefited a lot from it in terms of, like, getting the lobby experience and,
Were you all able to lobby last year at LegCon?
No, we didn't participate in the lobby day with them, but that was intentional because we wanted to save that for our own lobby day and not go, like, in bulk with all of the other students, because we wanted to choose our own issues also. But, like, in terms of, like, researching the issue, like, being passionate about what we were lobbying for, and, like, we, like, at the conference, we did get lobby practice and experience and, like, learn some skills, so it definitely made me more confident for the DC lobby trip. But, I mean, bottom line, like, I just think that we benefit from USSA through, like, the resources and the relationships that they give us. And so it's not something that, like, as the Director of Government Affairs, I'm willing to just cut off completely. Especially because, like, we've had people, like, go there over the summer, a part of the Congress, to say, like, this is what's important to us and this is what we want our federal issues to be.
I agree with you, and I think if we lived in Virginia, then going to LegCon would be really important, but living in Oregon, where we couldn't even participate in lobbying if we wanted to, because typically students have to get back, so we missed that day either way, I just don't see justifying spending over $10,000 on that when we also have the second trip. And it's not something that I've seen to have been proven that it's necessary. But at the same time, the money that you are all using for LegCon at this point, you are not asking for from SIFC. So I think that Brad's question is a completely different one. But I just wanted this subject to be addressed if we were going to be talking about it.
Well, it's also important to remember when you're, during the budgeting process, when you're trying to create new line items or reallocating money for travel to try to basically properly allocate the right amount of money for travel, particularly for the DC trip. The part of the reason that trip was created, if you look at the history of it, was because when you dropped out of USSA. The reason we have the trip is because it's supposed to be something that comes specifically from ASOSU, and because students felt that they were getting adequate training, or really the best training from OSA, and then from inside within ASOSU, that they were able to have that trip themselves. Other universities don't have that same option where they're going on their own trip, where they set their own priority issues and then also go with USSA. So I think it's important to remember that by doing so, it can be a beneficial opportunity, but you also have to make sure that you're evaluating, is it the best use of student fees, because students have already decided to have their own trip where they set their own priority issues and train themselves and also receive training from OSA.
I think USSA is important, which is why we're going, I have prioritized it for this year, is because there is an emphasis on issues of higher education for underrepresented communities, and I don't think we get that. I mean, I think that ASOSU tries to, and OSA does a really good job of it, but I think that there is, USSA is distinct from the DC lobby trip because of the caucus spaces and the ability for groups to be together and talk about issues and form priority issues to lobby on the federal level that we just don't have.
That is entirely a part of the DC lobby trip. I mean, I remember last year when we were making the priority issues for the DC lobby trip.
No, I'm not talking like I went on the lobby trip. I went on the lobby trip too, the DC lobby trip 4 years ago with Madison Tyler. Anyways, it was great. But there is something different. there is something different about being with a group of people who look like you and who have the same, or not even look like you, have the same experiences in higher education as you. And so I think it's really important. I don't even know, like, I'm so sorry, I don't know if this is on topic.
This year where people collaborated on ideas of that nature, and then last year during the lobby trip some of the topics were on diversity issues that were relevant to students. So my point is that the point was made that they do the same things at that trip as they do here, and the point I'm trying to make is backing up that statement.
I think it's important that we continue to like foster those relationships that we have with USSA, just because of the benefits that we get from it. Like I said, the relationships and also like the job opportunities that present themselves to people that are interested in advocacy. So I think it's like a really good thing to continue, but I can definitely compromise with you all that it's a lot of money to be sending a large delegation.
See, that's
and
what I was saying.
That amount of people going every year isn't like going to be necessarily valuable.
Okay, so what I want to just respond to Amelia's really quick, because you mentioned it is important and everything that you mentioned is very important. Then why not prioritize Congress instead of legislative Congress, because that's where you're actually setting those priority issues and you're working within those caucuses on those issues, rather than having the time where you're basically one of the best things that you get out of that within LegCon is that you have the ability or the opportunity to go and do that.
Yeah.
So you have the opportunity to take all those same resources if it was prioritized into Congress, and that would make more sense for me, because you're still strengthening those relationships like you both were talking about, but you're actually able to be fully a part of the process, whereas in recent years they've missed out on a large part of the conference.
Yeah, for sure. So with the legislative conference, it's also about bringing interns and students who wouldn't normally go on the DC lobby trip. For this administration, Congress is great, but it's in July, and we don't have that wealth of interns and volunteers who would need that experience. The main people who would go are cabinet members, and I don't think it's as valuable for them to go as new staff or volunteers and interns, and we just don't have. I think it'd be unfair, or I don't think it'd be good use of student funds to spend that many people going.
I feel like as a student, if I was going to trust certain students to set national policy, I would want them to be cabinet members. I would want them to be trained, and I would want them to make intentional decisions that have been backed up and aren't just a learning experience, because it's also a learning experience, but I feel like it should come from a trained historical perspective.
We could add the Congress to the travel line item. If that's a priority, we can definitely do that.
I think maybe it's a good idea to explore the idea of Congress. I just wanted to speak a little bit to the legislative conference itself. As having experienced it last year as an intern, I feel like it really brought me up to speed with a lot of the issues, and in particular, it offered something that I haven't seen anywhere else, which comes hand in hand with the caucus groups. During the caucus groups, there was also ally groups for people that are not part of that caucus. So, when I got here to OSU last year, I got here with the intention of moving towards peace in as much of an intentional way as possible. And I was enrolled in a sociology class, and I learned about systemic inequalities. And so when I saw that there was a women's ally caucus at LegCon, I jumped on that opportunity. And I got in that, and it dramatically changed my outlook on a lot of things. And I got very involved with attempting to create a gender equity group here on campus last term, and getting involved with the Women's Studies Department as well. So it did a lot of things for my own professional development. I was nowhere near being a cabinet member in the administration last year. I was an intern, and I feel like the interns would benefit a lot.
Okay, cool. We're gonna move on from that for right now. So I guess the thing we're gonna have to work on until open hearing would be the working capital piece, because I want to see what I kind of would like to see where that might be at the end of the year, because I'm feeling there's a good chance we'll want to use some of that to offset some fee. Because right now, like your year-to-date expenses, you're like $40,000 under what you were last year, and And last year, this still ended up positive about $33,000. So I kind of like to maybe see where that might be at and if we can use any of that. And then I also, I dropped your admin, on your admin budget, the salary increase. Where did it- okay. I don't know where that went. Your salary increase is just 1.9%. And then I also dropped the maintenance for a Safe Ride by 8,000, and then I included $2,000 for the mileage for that third van.
Increased by 2,000.
Increased it by 2,000, and I also adjusted your summer fee because the calculation was wrong. You were using like what summer 15 fee numbers for summer 14, and then that will drop your academic year fee to $19, fall, winter, spring, and then we can still go ahead and use your $672 for summer 2015. Cool. So I just want to get that clear, and then one thing I want to touch with HSRC. What's that?
True.
Yeah.
One thing that just wasn't brought up during the discussion about salaries and the student salaries, you say that the minimum wage is going up, I believe you said 1.7%, or that's the planned, the anticipated?
Yeah, I mean, that's what happened in last year.
Okay, so the ASOSU salary budgets are pegged to a percentage above minimum wage. So if minimum wage goes up, say 1.7% again, that doesn't mean that everybody's will go up 1.7%. The top scale people in ASOSU, the president and vice president, theirs go up 31% over minimum wage.
Mine goes up 42, and
Or
then
42,
the second
yeah.
one goes up.
42 for president, 31 for Dan. So a nominal minimum wage increase at the bottom echoes up as it goes higher on the scale.
Yeah, because each tier is tied
And
to-
so reducing, that's why the salary budget was set the way it was, is because a 1.7% increase means that minimum wage goes up that much. But it echoes as it goes further up the scale.
That's when we were asking how they came with the calculation, is it wasn't explained that they went, if you went through by basically with each tier, right? So if you go through with the president and they're gonna increase, like when minimum wage increases by 42%, and then you do that for the vice president, and then you go through all the executive cabinet positions, and then you go through every other position, and that's how they came to the total, then that would be justifiable. But just saying that we picked 5.8% because we wanted to get cushion doesn't make it justifiable for an actual rate to increase.
It came out to 5. We've done.
So you went through every single position?
I can speak to this because I did this calculation with the two of them. We've done it. It came out to just below 260,000. So they said it. They marked it at 260,000 as a safeguard.
Okay.
That was
yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't have a chance to get that in, and I tried to share that with Matt to share, and then you all moved on. So.
Okay, no, that's okay. So I can change that real quick thanks to Excel. So that brings the fee to $19.15. I would say that's something I would want to see that included. Like, I don't know if you do it with Excel or however you got to that number. That'd be something I'd want to see by the open hearing. Does that sound good?
It should be in there. I mean, there's a table with all the positions, wasn't there?
They're the same.
It's just the.
What's that?
So tell me we need a motion. We need a motion.
That's true, that did get cut off.
I don't know specifically. I remember seeing it, and I've seen several iterations.
Yeah, I mean, there is something, I don't know what the. Yeah, I'm guessing this is.
This doesn't have an hourly, so I couldn't.
Yeah, it's.
I couldn't say.
Yeah, so just if you make it like, so I mean, this is what you're talking about, just make it, if you could, like, is this what you're talking about right here?
That doesn't look like the one I remember.
Okay.
But
This is.
the request to change the budget has happened several times, so I don't know where.
Okay.
You guys see the line FTE to CSU total, that's the percentages that they're paid at above minimum wage.
Oh, that's actually
The
a
president
good
is
point.
at 43, the vice
Yeah.
president is at 31. So on.
There we go.
Cool. Yeah, so I mean, I guess
So that was
if you could find the
There's
one
no
that you kind of did
total-
those
there were-
calculations
they
on or
did-
something like that.
Yeah, we'll see what we can find.
But
Yeah,
my
okay, cool.
point was, if you
Direct
want
that
this
request to them.
Yeah,
I will do what I can to support.
So we want that documentation.
totals, though, because they don't change.
Um,
Why are there two total lines which cut off the index?
So on HSRC, I noticed you're asking for increase of aid and the subsidies. However, I know last fiscal year they actually spent under what they were budgeted. So I'm kind of curious on like why they did when they need more now.
I believe it's to establish that
Right, or just, let's.
Well, so, we have been, basically, we've been trying to establish a contingency fund. So whenever we do end up separating from ASOSU, we want to have our own contingency fund. We'll need that in order to separate. And so, part of the expected is that whenever we are able to save on our administrative costs, that's what it's going toward.
Yeah, but this is specifically on your other student aid, which I believe is your subsidies. You're allocated more than what you spent in last year.
Okay, on the subsidies, we have specific subsidies that we want to make sure that we meet need whenever it's there. So for example, whenever we have one of our subsidies is emergency housing for our students who are homeless.
Mm-hmm.
We feel that that's a high priority. If a homeless student comes to us, we want to be able to meet that need. And so we have an amount allocated for that. We don't always have as many homeless students as we plan for, which is a good thing. We would prefer not to have homeless students. But like I said, when one comes to us, we want to make sure that we have the subsidies for them. When we don't end up serving as many students as we have money allocated for it, that's either savings that we end up, we've been putting in that contingency fund, or we reallocate that to other subsidies. So for example, we usually put money toward meal bucks if we don't spend in all of our
Is meal bucks.
That's one that's asking for the.
Yeah, and is meal bucks also under the other student aid?
I'm not sure. Can I take a look at what you're looking at?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, that's our total subsidy budget.
For meal bucks and.
That's all of the
All the
subsidies,
subsidies, yeah. Okay. Do you know what how you're doing this year compared to last year in giving out subsidies and aid?
This year, I guess what specifically do you mean?
I just like, is it lower than last year, higher than last year? By how
I
much?
can tell you that the amounts of students qualifying for meal bucks this term is the highest number ever that have qualified.
So you're granting out more dollar amount too?
We have, yeah, we just have a fixed amount for our budget.
No, okay, so then
So the
you're
dollar amount per
would
student would be less.
same, wait.
And I'm sorry.
If we have a fixed amount to give to students and more students qualified this term, we're able to give each individual student less money.
Okay,
Because we just have a fixed dollar amount in our budget.
but that went up, like you requested more, I guess, like.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, we're trying
Don't they
to
have a
figure out.
7% increase in subsidies every year because of, or
Well,
whatever
we're
the increase
asking-
is because of enrollment? Did you do that last year too?
We asked for a total budget increase based off enrollment last year.
Yeah, so
And
that's why that
more
went
of
up.
that was put into, and the board last year made the determination to just increase all of our budget line items by, I think it was 4.2% last year. So that was the request for last year. Last year, the request was no increase in our fee at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so if your question is how I guess I don't understand what the question that you're asking is.
Wait, well, I think what you're asking for is, why are we asking for more money for subsidies?
It was, why did you ask for more money, for more money for subsidies following a year when you used less? But with that increase number, that makes sense.
Yeah, we.
Yeah,
we did
and,
use less.
I mean,
Well,
supporting the subsidies.
Where we save is like, if we don't have as many students, like I said, for emergency
Yeah.
housing, but that, like, I mean, with meal bucks, that's gone up a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. I would
Makes
say,
sense.
in other student aid, if that can be broken out into like meal bucks and other subsidies into more, so instead it's just like a huge line item that is not, it just says other student aid, it's not as descriptive as like then you have emergency housing loans
Yeah.
versus meal bucks versus
Yeah, I can break
food
that out for you.
subsidies.
That's just kind
That'd
of
be
how the
helpful.
account goes. Yeah.
Okay. So right now, at least, I think the fee at 19.15 for the summer, and then 672.
Wait.
You mean for
the other way around?
academic year?
Oh yeah, 19.15 fall, winter, spring, and then I believe it's 672. 672 in the summer. Seems like an agreeable number. And then we still need to receive some information over the next few days, as well as figure out the working capital.
Yeah. And then
So is this, which decision packages is this including?
this includes
All of them?
all of them.
Okay.
You basically, so like, you would approve mandated increases based on what they're required, and then when you go through with like OSA, you approve that. You go through Safe Ride, you cut the $8,000 for maintenance, but increase $2,000 for the mileage on the third van, give them a third van, and then the $2,000 whatever increase for DC, and then HSRC's increase in subsidies and
The OSA. Okay.
the other one, yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering
But
why.
it just needs to be re-examined, and then the other.
Okay, I just wondered
fee
why
would
we're
be-
going for 19.15 if approving everything instead of.
Yeah, well, there was some errors with the summer fee. That's actually the majority of the decrease.
Okay, cool. No worries.
And we're accepting, their student pay increase, the 15,000.
Yeah, because Drew
For right
explained
now,
to us
yeah.
that they went through, yeah, so that means obviously everything's tentative until the actual, but at least, yeah.
I move to tentatively approve the fall, winter, and spring fee at 19.15 and the summer fee at 6.72 for ASOSU.
Second.
Let me get this right out. All right, is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. Amelia?
4.
Tyler?
4.
Nick? 4. Madison?
4.
Tori?
4.
Tara?
4.
That's our first 6-0 vote. And a 6-0 vote, unanimously, the motion is approved for a tentative fee at $19.15 for fall, winter, spring in fiscal year 14, and a summer 2015 fee at $6.72. Just a reminder, that was a tentative fee. We will make a final decision on your final fee level next Tuesday, February 12th at 5 p.m. in the MU Ballroom. Thank you for your presentation. And that is all we have to do.